Alrighty. Hello, hello. Happy Friday, everybody. I see a good amount of you are already coming in. It's good to have you guys in here. Let me know if you guys can hear me well. If the screen is good. Okay. Alrighty. Just give me a thumbs up in the chat. If you guys can hear me well. Happy Friday, Mike. Nice. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Okay, we're gonna wait for a couple more people to join up, and then yeah, we're gonna get straight into it. All right, so I'm just gonna wait a couple of minutes, probably around like 2 minutes, like I usually do, and then we'll get on it. I'm gonna be sharing first off the document, so you guys are able to have the document as always. I'll put this in the chat. There we go. So go ahead and join up that document whenever you guys can. This is basically going to be going over the webinar right now that we're going to be discussing today, and using some of the using some of the ones that we're going to be talking about custom action wise, and then we're going to go straight into it. All right. Thank you, Nader. And thank you, CRM Pros. Appreciate that. Wow, it's 4 a.m. in Saturday. Wait, it's 4 a.m. Saturday in Brisbane. Jesus Christ. Get some rest, man. This is gonna be recorded, so you'll be able to have this like after. But you can't sacrifice the 8 hours. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, Mike. What's up, Patrick? Good to have you here, man. What's up, Gustavo? Bienvenido, bienvenido. Alrighty. Okay, so we got a couple people here. Today's about updating contact records during call. Yeah, we could definitely discuss that. I know that's gonna be one of the ones that we're gonna be touching base on, but we're gonna get more of an overview on everything. So, what is this webinar about, right? So, essentially, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, let me know if you guys are able to see this. Yep, you can. All good. Okay, so essentially, we are going to be talking about the best ways to use custom actions in Synthflow. Now, note this, I don't tell you exactly how to integrate one specific custom action because I believe one custom action would take a little bit even more than a webinar. But this is a main webinar to discuss like questions and like all that stuff. So obviously I'm going to give an overview of post, get, patch, and put, which are the four custom types of custom actions that you can make on Synthflow. And I'm going to show you ways to use them inside of Synthflow for your voice AI assistants. And then lastly, I'm going to show you how to be able to implement them in a simple way. I'm not going to show you exactly like, how to do it in terms of like going into go high level, doing it over there and bringing it back. No, this is going to be just like a simple overview because we don't have enough time to go over everything. I'm sure you guys already understand that. But then again, feel free to ask any questions. Patrick, as you mentioned, you have a lot of questions. So I hope everybody else also has a ton of questions. So that way I can answer them all. We're going to have enough time. And yeah, I'm super excited to get them to you. So let's go ahead and get started. I am super excited about this one. So, okay. So a couple of things, right? Couple of things. First off, what are post, get, patch, and puts? What are those API calls, right? Let's go over here to custom actions real quick. Let's refresh the page because Synthflow is constantly dropping updates real quick. And then I'm going to go over to the actions tab. So that way you guys have like the whole overview of everything. All right. So this is the actions tab. I've had so many like custom actions made, but what you guys are going to do, right, is you are basically going to have the marketplace templates. So you just click on these. All these templates I was able to make for you guys. And essentially right here, this is where you're going to be seeing the get, the post, the put, patch, and then delete. Okay. So, what do these mean, right? So, essentially, I'm going to give you a brief overview of each of them. So, gets, let's start with gets. So, with a get, you are basically getting information from a third party platform that's not related to Synthflow. So, an example of this, if we go over to the get section, you could see we can get contacts from HubSpot. We can get a list of products from HubSpot. We can get notes from an appointment on Go High Level, get user preferences from Go High Level, all that stuff. We can use that as a get. So, quick example of this. Essentially, if you were to use a get inside of the voice AI assistant, you would use it. Let's say we use this one right here, get user preferences, which is the main one that I'm going to be talking about today. Um, well, one of the main ones. And essentially, what this does is it uses the user's phone number to be able to gather information on the user on Go High Level. So, for example, if I have an inbound assistant that's I don't know, like a receptionist essentially, and the inbound assistant is capable of identifying the user's phone number. And then before the call even starts, we could then send an API call over to Go High Level to fetch all the information that we need from that person. So, first name, last name, um, extra details, LinkedIn information, whatever you want that it's already in Go High Level as a custom field, you would be able to pull up using this action. Now you could see how powerful that already is. We're literally talking about somebody calling this inbound receptionist and the inbound receptionist picking up saying, "Hey, this is blah blah blah," and then after that, the inbound assistant would be able to say like, "Okay, perfect. So I'm talking to Kevin, or I am talking with blah blah, and this is the last thing that we spoke about." Like you could get really, really creative with this. So essentially, like you could even include like past calls that you've had with this person as a transcript, and you could easily reference those past calls in the current call, right? So past call identifiers, as we've talked about before, you guys have gone through the whole thing with me. So that's just another way that you could use it, right? So uh, yeah, so Patrick, how does let me put this up here as well. I'm gonna answer. This is gonna be one where I answer questions as I go as well. So, how does Go High Level have access to all that information without the assistant asking? Yeah, so essentially, Go High Level will already have this stored inside. So, for example, if you're doing like outbound calls, usually what I see this happen is you upload a CSV onto Go High Level, right? And then from that CSV, you update the custom fields, right? So pretty much once you update the custom fields, all we're doing with this action is going in and collecting those custom fields before the call even starts. So for example, um, by what I mean by before the call even starts is they made the call and like before the assistant even speaks, the assistant already ran this action pretty much. So that's how it is. Let's see what else. There's other questions. Yeah. So, what custom actions are you focusing on? So, yeah. So these are the four that we're going to be focusing on today. So we have create a contact on Go High Level, get user preferences from Go High Level. which is the one that we're speaking about right now, update contact on HubSpot, and then update contact on Go High Level. All right, so these are the ones that we're going to be speaking about. And let me see if I didn't miss out any ones. I have one about API endpoints. Mm-hmm. All right, let's see this one. Brett, so you mentioned if a call requires a UID in the endpoint and the agent use real-time variables to make the call inside the AI. So yeah, so this would be a during the call action. Okay. So for example, if I go to, I don't know, let's say this one right here, and you could see it's during the call. So basically, what this would mean is you make this endpoint right here, which is this endpoint, you could use the variable, whatever variable you want to use on here, and then you could link this variable to a variable that you add on here that can be grabbed from the call itself. Like, for example, the person's, I don't know, anything like email, phone number, whatever it is. And you could use that connected to this to make that endpoint call. But this you can't do before the call. You would have to do during the call once you gather that information. So hopefully that answers your question, Brett. All right. How do we get him to see the chat? Yeah. So for outbound, yeah, you have the information, but for inbound, if somebody's calling back to the outbound, for example, once you make calls, you also want to have an inbound set up. So that way you have the what was it called? So you make the outbound call, and then you also have an inbound that is capable of getting the calls that are incoming. You would still be able to do the same exact thing, Patrick. So yeah. So you would obviously have to have a contact that's in Go High Level already. Yeah, basically. And all right, let's move on to the next one, though. So now we have post, right? So create a contact on Go High Level. Let's go ahead and get that over here. So back to the marketplace and then post here. And all right, so this one right here. Okay, so how would this work? Essentially, this is very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and create the action here for you guys. So it's applying the template, and it's already these are already all made. The only thing you want to replace this with is you basically want to add in your own Go High Level, and then from your Go High Level, you are basically able to just authorize the whole process. And then obviously you add in whatever factor you want to be added onto that contact. So for example, you obviously will need a phone number and an email to be able to create this contact. But if you want to add things like first name, last name, you can also do so. But then again, keep in mind that you also need to include the location ID. So this is just an idea that you guys can go about with. But essentially, if it's a new inbound contact, then you can go over it by asking them a couple of questions. And then in a certain point, you perform this API action, right? So how do you know when this API call is going to be performed? All right. So you basically know by this section right here. So this is the description. It needs to be made a little bit more clear, but pretty much this is a brief explanation of when and how this action should be used by the AI. All right. So we call this API to create a user in Go High Level. But what you need to specify in is call this API when the user does X to create a user in Go High Level. So this is how you would be able to identify when you want that API call to be made. All right. So just keep that in mind when setting up these API calls, because if you don't have this in place, so it correlates to the conversation that you're having, then it might be performing the API call in the wrong time. So if that solves any problems, obviously let me know. And if you have any questions, also let me know on that. All right. So keep in mind, this, what I just mentioned right now, only takes place whenever you have it during the call. If it's before the call, you're always going to be just running this immediately. Okay. Once the call begins. All right. So now we'll go into the patch. And by the way, I'll show you guys how to set these up in just a second in more detail. But the patch and put, right? So these are essentially pretty much the same thing, except that patch is capable of doing an update in specific platforms. As you can see right here, this one works for HubSpot, and then a put works for Go High Level. But let's go ahead and open that up real quick. All right. So right here, you can see the options for Go High Level as a put, and then the options as a patch by HubSpot. This is really just whatever they prefer to use to update inside of their system. So it really depends on the third party you're using, right? But in this case, we're going to be using the update contact on Go High Level. Right? So we create this action. All right, perfect. Okay, so we create this action right here, and as you can see, Brett, this is one of the things that goes back to what you mentioned. In order to be able to update this contact, we would need a contact ID. So essentially, once you go to the configuration stage, you're going to be able to use and obviously create a variable that gathers the contact ID from the user. All right. So once it gathers that contact ID, it's capable of updating this contact inside of Go High Level, right? So this is also mentioning to the same thing I said before. Call this API when X happens to be able to update the user in Go High Level, right? So this is used sometimes. I would say most of the time it's not as used just because we could just use webhooks to be able to update the contact. However, if you want it to be updated in real time, you could use this method to be able to do so. And it would just be the same thing for the HubSpot. Uh, Same exact type of process. However, now that we have covered more or less a simple terms of what you would use these APIs for, how do we include them inside of the prompt? Okay, so this is where you would need a little more time to set up. All right, so let's start first off with the get user preferences. Let's use user, get user preferences right here. And basically what I'm doing is I'm searching Go High Level with the phone number. And right here, you can see that it pulls up all the information from Go High Level. This is the one that you're mostly going to be using. I can guarantee you that. So what we're going to be doing is going back over to the prompting. So I'm going to keep that open actually. And let's go back to the prompting here. This is just a normal assistant that I created, which is one of the template assistants that I've made for Synthflow. And right here, you are going to be connecting the get user preferences. All right. So I'll go ahead and delete it and connect it again for you guys. Here we go. Let's go back here. All right. So now that it's connected, we can go over to the prompt. And essentially, you are able to create a section inside of the knowledge base so that you can name it user preferences. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. So this would be user preferences. Or you can even name it users information. It really depends on whatever you want to name it. Here we would have the first name, last name, and let's just do email and phone number. Just common things that you guys could use. All right, now how do we get this information from the get user preferences custom action, right? So the first thing that you're gonna do is go over to this section. So available action results. So what does this mean? This basically means these are the fields that we can pull from the API response. So this is the API response. What do you want to pull from here? So what we did is we want to pull the first name, last name, email, and phone number. All right, so let's go ahead and do email. And then you see it's selected right there. We do phone number. There we go. We do last name. And then we do first name. All right, so now that we have the four of them selected, and there's a couple more that were selected, but either way, now that we have the four of them selected, how do we reference that inside of the prompting itself? So you would go right here, and as you can see, you do a chevron. So you open up a chevron, and you can select the first name. Then we're gonna put in the last name. You're gonna put in the email, and then of course the phone number. So, guys, what does this mean? This basically means that you are now able to grab the user's information as soon as you have the call happen. So, how will it grab the information? By just using the user's phone number inside, and it would grab it from inside of Go High Level, right? So, if they were a past customer or a past client that you've had before inside of there, you could even do this with like others. But the only reason we're using Go High Level for this is because Go High Level is one of the only softwares that is capable of having the information be searched up by just using the phone number and an authorization, right? So the API key. So this is why we mainly use Go High Level for this, but that's how you reference it. And now we can move on to how we would be able to use the other types of API calls. So let's go over here. Now we're going to be looking into how we would create a contact on Go High Level. All right. So I'm going to answer questions after these, because I know there's a lot of questions for this. Alrighty, here we go. Now this is create a contact in Go High Level. I'm going to go ahead and copy that and then go right here. So these are the two actions, and essentially, how will you be able to use this action? How will you be able to set it up inside of your assistant? Well, I'm going to go ahead and make another section for this. Let's say, for example, after you ask the user, let's say they booked an appointment, right? Let's look this up or confirm. Just looking for an area where we can just plug this in. All right, here we go. Mhm. All right. So here's how you would use this. As I mentioned before, you connect it into the actions as usual, and basically you are going to be able to reference this tool, aka API call, inside of the prompting itself. So we could say something like, once the user provides the party size, use the tool. I don't think I connected it. Let me just connect it real quick. Save that. Right, so we connect the custom action here. Contacts. Here we go. So we have that created contact on Go High Level action on there. Go back to the prompting. And then use the tool. Create contact on Go High Level. So once this happens, pretty much what we can do is we can grab the results back from contact Go High Level. So we would do this by using the same exact strategy that I told you guys before. Once you have the action results and you're able to successfully create a contact, you could pull up anything, right? If you want to pull something up, you could easily do so. You would do it the same way. All right, let's say I want to go ahead and get that contact. Let's do ID here. All right, so we get that contact ID to use it maybe for the other thing, right? To update that contact, right? I feel like it would be pretty useful like that. Now, all you would do is go here. Once you use the tool, oh, this is getting slow. All right. Once you use the tool, you will receive the contact ID, which is, and then in quotations, we could get the contact ID right here. Okay. All right. So we would get that contact ID. And then from here on out, you would be able to reference that contact ID into other API calls so that you could then update the contacts. All right. So this is essentially how you would use the post method. Pretty much we are still able to, there's many different other ways to use the post method. Like for example, you could even use this to create an appointment inside of Go High Level or HubSpot or wherever it is. Um, there's just many different ways that you could go about doing it. So this is how you would set it up on that end. All right. So let's go ahead and save that prompt and go back into the other one. Before anything, I do want to answer some questions right here real quick. Right. Let's use this one. In the scenario where we design an API that extracts information from a database like MongoDB, can the custom action send an identifier for the search, such as phone number, and what format needed? Okay, yeah. So if you want to send it to like another third-party platform, you would first need to go through their API documentation, and you would need to check what they need. So Go High Level, the only requirement that Go High Level needs is a phone number. Okay. And then obviously an authorization. But it depends on what Mongo database needs, right? So if Mongo database needs a first name, a last name, a date of birth, and a phone number to match the contact, that's what you would put on there instead of just a phone number. And you would do that by using parameters. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question, Ismail, but it depends on the documentation, as I mentioned. Right. This is just a conversation between Patrick and Brian. So I believe I will keep going. All right. Super cool stuff, Kevin. We use this on Zoho as a CRM. Would this work with that as well? Yes, it definitely would. All right. Awesome. So, yes, it definitely would, Ali. Uh, all you would need to do is be able to connect that API call onto Zoho, which should relatively easy. You can easily go to Zoho API documentation. And then as you can see, there are, well, you would need to explore the REST APIs. And then here they have a bunch of APIs that you could explore and obviously connect to, which you could then just run a custom action onto them. So hopefully that clears it up somewhat on there. I know it was a rough explanation, but all right, let's keep going. Let's finish this all up. We now have the patch and put requests. I'm just going to do one of them as in they're basically the same exact thing. Let's use HubSpot in this case. All right, so I'm going to go back over here and we're going to use the patch. And we're going to go to HubSpot, update a contact on HubSpot. So create that. Okay. Now, what do you need? As I mentioned before, what do you need to be able to update a contact on HubSpot? So it's very similar to Go High Level. You basically need a contact ID. Okay. So you would be able to grab that contact ID by first searching that contact by using a GET request on HubSpot. So very similar to what we were doing inside of the Go High Level one, but essentially, this is what it would be. So we were we were able to update the contact right here, by using the contact ID. And then, of course, you can add any variables that you want to update the contact in here as. And then you could get very creative with it. But then this is request. So execute this act on HubSpot, but you would also have to let the API know when it should be used. So execute this action once the user provides their party size to update a contact on HubSpot. It's very similar to it's basically the same thing on on repeat. Um, but once you get the hang of it and you start practicing it, you will be able to understand how to get, these API calls working in an easier manner. So once you're able to update that contact on HubSpot, if you want to gather more information from that contact, you could easily do so as well. Like for example, you could grab the contact ID right here from that person, and you could even use it for other updates throughout the conversation itself. All right. Now, if I go back to the prompting and I go in and I select this update contact on HubSpot, this would essentially be the same exact thing as this. All right. So it's the same format right here. Yep. So it uses the tool to update the contact on HubSpot. And then once the tool is used, you'll receive the contact ID, which is what you can grab from here. Yep. So the results ID or the 0, usually it's 0. And then from here on out, you could use that contact ID to update other contacts. Update the same contact throughout the same conversation. All right. So you would use that by using an API call. Now, what I will say is that there are so many ways. I'm just giving you guys like an overview, like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, giving you guys a simple overview of how to use or how you can use API calls throughout this entire process. Now, I'm gonna leave this because I know that there are some of you who weren't able to get the Google Doc here. So this Google Doc will have the exact templates of the put, patch, get, and post request on here. So that way you guys are able to see exactly the templates that I used for this webinar itself. Now, I'm going to do one more thing, which I know is going to be pretty beneficial for you guys. So essentially, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about how to book an appointment better. So I'm sure you guys have already noticed that sometimes when booking an appointment, you get something that repeats the booking process of the appointment, and this is caused. Well, I'm not going to dive deep into it, but essentially, um, I'm sure you guys have heard this before, but it goes over and it starts booking your appointment, and it says, "Okay, booking your appointment. All right, perfect. Booking your appointment for this time at this time. Okay, perfect. Your appointment has been booked." Blah blah. So essentially, once you make that, there's like a couple of things that can go wrong by doing this, and I'm going to show you guys how to be able to have a better process of booking an appointment. So that way, it's just all right. You want to book in for this time? Yes, I want to book in for that time. Okay, perfect. You're booked. Instead of having to go through that stumbling that that the assistant does, you're able to do this differently with an API call. And I'll show you guys. Um, I'll tell you guys exactly how I do it. But first, before I touch base on that, I want to basically let you know what are the problems of doing it with the native action, which I'll show you guys right here. So currently, if you guys go to real-time booking and you go into the native action, let's just select this one, right? Once you connect this native action, there are a couple of things that you are pretty much lacking when using it. So, first of all, this real-time booking action only books into one time zone. All right. So it's the time zone that you set up right here. All right. So this already brings up problems because we're gathering available times from that time zone. Um, and what if somebody else is in another time zone, right? What if you have multiple branches? Now it's like a hassle. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is obviously the stumbling that I told you guys about. So that stumbling is obviously not something that is very human like. So we want to get rid of that stumbling. Another thing is the third thing is basically having the assistant book an appointment twice. So, for example, if the assistant asks for a specific time and then the user says yes to that time and the assistant books that time, this basically means that the assistant booked in the time, but then let's pretend the user said, ah, never mind, I want to book it for this time instead. The assistant will go ahead and rebook them and not schedule the last call. So this means that now you will have two appointments for that one person. Okay, and this is amongst like a lot more features. So the fourth problem is that you would essentially have a you won't be able to book into multiple calendars. So that's like another issue that I see happening, where if you use the native one, you have to create multiple actions right here to be able to book into multiple calendars. But then you think about to yourself, like, okay, well, we can't create multiple actions. So this assistant is only capable of booking into one calendar, right? So these four core issues are like really bad. Okay, so you want to make sure that whenever you're running campaigns of like outbound campaigns or whatever it is, you want to make sure that you're able to book in to multiple calendars or have these time zone differences or whatever it is already in place. Then obviously even have it be more humanized. So how do we do this? The way that you're going to be able to do this is with the get free slots API call. Now, this would basically only work by going into the assistant, right? And then whenever the user asks for, available times or whatever is, or we get to that stage where they ask for available times, you would then be able to gather those available times, but you would not book them on this call. And let me explain that. You would not book them on this call because you are just gathering the available time or the time that they chose from the get free slots. So I'll run you guys down through it, right? Um, I was gonna do a paint, but either way, I think it's fine. I'll do it with words. Think about it like this, right? I have a call with an inbound assistant, and this inbound assistant gives me free time slots, right? She tells me, okay, we're available for this time on Friday and 2 p.m. on Saturday, for example. I say, okay, let's do 2 p.m. on Saturday. And then the assistant would say, okay, perfect. I booked you in for that time. And then I say, no, never mind. I want to get booked in for 1 p.m. on Monday. The assistant would not double book this person because it's booking them right after the call ends using a webhook. Okay. Now, once, uh, how do we get that information of like what was the last time that I chose to get booked at? How do we get that information, right? So how you would do it is you would go into info extractors and then here, I don't know why this happens. Hold on. Mm, mm, mm. Nah, I could just explain. I don't know why this is happening. Anyway, I'm gonna see before I go into it. I'm gonna see if it works on here. Info extractors. Here we go. There it is. Nice. So I asked the assistant after the call ends, what was the confirmed time, date of the appointment in EST time in this format? MMDD 2025 hours, month, and then AM or PM. What would this do? So this would basically convert the any time zone, right, that the assistant said for sorry, that the user has or discussed throughout the call, it'll convert it over to the time zone that you want it to be converted over to your team, right? So if your team is in EST time zone, This basically means that every single time it will get booked into your calendar on EST time, but on your client's side, or sorry, on the customer's side, they will be able to see it on their time zone. So how cool is that, honestly? Um, so yeah, essentially you're booking the meeting after the call happens, not during the call, but it would just get booked like it would literally just get booked like a minute or less after the call happens. So basically, you're going to be having still a very good satisfaction rate for the user, no matter what. And then obviously you can match that up with confirmations, as in like sending an email to them, sending an SMS to them, however it is, you'll be able to do that through there. But this is the best way. And it's another way, as I mentioned, to use API calls for with Synthflow, right? So I'm going to be answering a couple of you guys' questions so that way we can go through them. And in case I didn't miss anything, all right, let me drink some water real quick. Yeah, so um, I'm gonna call you Okaye, Okoye. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but essentially, yeah. So custom actions are API calls. So that's hopefully a simple answer to this question. But you connect a custom action. Like a custom action is just an API call, as you can see right here. You're just connecting all the features on there. It looks more complicated than a normal API call because things like think about it like this: Zapier, Make, N8N, Go High Level. They're all making API calls. They just simplify it really easily for you, so you think it's just part of their platform, but it really isn't. They're just making API calls to other platforms. So that's how it would work. So hopefully that answers your question, Okoye. All right. Let's see right here. Rod, could you specify on which prompt exactly? I kind of like rambled on for a bit, so I'm not entirely sure which one you're referring to anymore. But essentially, can you give an example to of the prompt that you are using to build? Yes, I could just provide the prompt for you guys as well, like this prompting right here. If you guys need this prompt, I'm gonna put it right here. All right, that's no problem. This is just one of the templates that I already made. If you guys want to download the template, it's either in the marketplace, so right here. Now we could view all templates, and it's called the restaurant one. So this is the template that I used. I'm gonna drop it in the chat here so you guys can see it. But yeah, essentially that's like where we would be able to get that. Um, it seems like I can't use that variable extension in the call transfer actions though. I think you're talking to somebody else, not me. All right, let's see here. Does the meeting title with the contact name actually work for you? The meeting title. Um, I might need you to elaborate a little bit more on this. By meeting title, do you just mean like the go ahead like any calendar meeting title? Um, yeah, I'm not entirely sure if I follow here. But if you could reword it, I could like answer this like pretty easily. Maurice, right? Great stuff, Kevin. Thank you, man. API calls have made my voice AI agents freeze for extended time and the user hangs up. Have you had this issue? Yes, I have had that issue and I've solved that issue. Typically, it's whatever route you're having the assistant take whenever making these calls. So, for example, if the prompting is too difficult for the assistant to understand, it's going to get stuck and it's going to basically not respond for 20 to 30 seconds if you don't know how to prompt it correctly. However, if you use the prompting style that I showed you today, and you could even use the prompting that I just put in here. Hold on, let me go ahead and give this for you guys again, just in case. I wish there's a way I could pin it, but there's no way I could pin messages. Um, yeah, so if you use this prompting style, you will be able to get the best results and it won't cancel. But usually it also depends on how you are running the API call. So if it's a hard API call that takes like a lot of time to finish, then you understand why it's taking, it's making you cause some like latency issues on there. All right. So hopefully that guides you. Essentially, it's mostly prompting. Yeah, I hear you. Thank you. Cody. All right. The meeting name in the custom action. Okay. All of my appointments say the same name when booked. Okay. So, all right, let me go back to the yes, Maurice. Yes, it actually works. It actually works. Okay, so let me explain that to you, Maurice. So, basically, guys, what Maurice is talking about is this right here, contact name. Yeah, so these are variables. So this variable right here, this is a go high level variable. It's not a Synthflow variable. So you won't be able to use lead name or anything like that that you use on Synthflow, which is usually done with one bracket. But if you do it with contact.name and two brackets on each side, two curly brackets, you will be able to see them on your calendar as the actual name. Like, trust me, Maurice, this has worked like every single time for me. That's like what I was able to learn and figure out with Go High Level when booking these appointments. So yes, it works completely good. And I'm sure you could do this with any other platform as well, as long as you have that, contact, that variable for that contact itself. All right. All right. Last question here. So, is it possible to have an action that gets the user to provide an extension and use that to connect them to someone directly? Possible to have an action that gets the user to provide an extension. Gets the user. So this means that the user will need to know what the extension is, right? Uh oh, I see. You're talking about an IVR system. I see you now. Okay. So you're talking about being able to ask the user a question and then transfer them to the according extension. 100%. You could easily do this. And you would do this by creating multiple call transfers here. Multiple. You can do way more than one. I hope you guys know. And then each call transfer would have their own extension. So I'm just going to create one here. Yeah. So each call transfer would have their own extension that you could forward them over to. And I think you need to use V2 to be able to get this going. But essentially, this is what would happen. So you want this transfer to take place whenever they say X, right? Or Y, whatever it is. But you only want it to be one reason. So it would be one reason for every single action of a call transfer that you add on here. So you would have, let's say, like five. If you have like five reasons or five numbers for five different extensions, you would have five call transfer actions. Hopefully that makes sense, Nils, right? But let me know if it doesn't. All right. Let me hide that on there. I'm gonna pin this as well. So okay. So another thing as well is in here. Let me go over here. Yeah, so this is the community that I have. So you guys have two communities available for you guys right now to get like extra support as well. We have the Academy on Synthflow, which is where we have like a good amount of support here, and I'm always active. I'm not too active on here, but I will start being more active as well. And then we also have another one where I'm mostly active at here, which is the AI Agency Vault. This is just led by me. If you guys want to join, of course, you guys are welcome to. We have over 300 members here. But essentially, my goal here is to teach you guys all things voice AI. That's like really what it is, and it's only with Synthflow, because Synthflow, in my eyes, is like basically the best. But I'm gonna leave this down here for you guys to be able to join as well. If you guys would like, you don't need to. However, it's gonna help you gain a lot of knowledge, and obviously, this is how I keep in contact with you guys. I only show this to you guys just because I want to talk with you guys throughout all of this stuff. So ask me any questions. Obviously, go through the whole process as well, and I'm gonna be there to help you guys out and give you additional support as I do for like a lot of people here, as you can see. So yeah, I'm gonna give you guys the link to this. This is like how you are able to join here. I'll leave that in the chat if you guys want. And essentially, this is basically how we would use API calls inside of Synthflow. So if you guys have any doubts, anything at all, obviously, please let me know. I am obviously 24/7 available for you guys. I just want to make sure that you guys get like the best support possible. Just message me either through the academy or through my own community, however it is. I want to make sure that you guys get helped throughout this process. I know voice AI is completely new to a lot of you guys, and I want to make sure you guys get treated like really well. Okay, so if you guys want even additional information, you guys are able to go right here. Um, to the YouTube, and in YouTube, I'm posting a bunch of content as well. So that way you guys are able to learn more about voice AI. Literally all I don't shut up about Synthflow and voice AI. So that's all you get from me. Um, but essentially these videos have helped out a lot of people, and I'm super glad that you guys have even been watching them. So I appreciate you guys for that. But I'm looking to put in like even better content. The quality is improving a lot more now that I have like a team behind it. And yeah, that was only possible because of you guys. So I really appreciate each and every one of you. Um, but yeah, essentially, I can stop streaming now, and I will hold on. How do I stop streaming? There you go. Kevin's prop converted to Jason. I did not see it. All right. Kevin, for someone who is having the AI agent do completely cold outreach, which prompt uh, can be better, V1 or V2 or voice design, floor designer? So okay, so essentially, there's always been a battle between V1 and V2. I can tell you confidently that V2 is going to end up better than V1. Right now, for most of our calls, I believe people are using. Uh, Honestly, it's starting to get into a mix, but everybody's leaning over towards V2 now, just because of the functionalities and like all the updates that we're going to be doing. But then again, we're focused on migration as well at the moment. Synthflow is. So we want to make sure that that migration gets done, as well as getting some of these updates out for you guys. But I would say, in simple terms, you would be able to use V. Try V2. I would say try V2 first. I still have mine on V1 personally. But try V2. If it works for you, perfect. Just go with V2. APIs work, conversation flows work, all that's good. In terms of the prompting or the flow designer, because I don't know if you guys already know about this, or if you do, I've received some pretty positive like replies from the flow designer. I don't know if you guys know about this actually, but essentially the flow designer was presented to you guys a couple of weeks ago, and you're basically able to now do this as like an actual workflow. um yeah, and you could have like a bunch of actions here, so like branches, steps, like all that. Like if I want to branch out here and then add a new step, I could easily do so. You could add custom actions, you could add all that way. uh, you, you could get very creative with this, but this is a very streamlined way of how you would be able to have the assistant, go through a specific conversation every single time. Now, I'm pretty sure it's still going to have the flexibility of it knowing to not follow this like to a T. But think about it like this. I love the way that my brother mentioned it to me. Think of this as like the prompt mode. this normal prompt mode right here that we're used to using, this is like a car, where a car has its lanes, but you could switch lanes, you could go through normally and all that stuff. However, a flow designer is like a train, where you have train tracks and you can only stick to those train tracks. And if you can decide to deviate those train tracks, you can, but the the train is not going to go anywhere else, right? Other than those train tracks. So test it, make sure you find the one that works for you, and then go about it that way. All right. So hopefully that answers your question, Ali. Yeah. So okay. If Synthflow can find a way to lower the cost per minute to be competitive with others, they would absolutely crush it. You'd be surprised with what's coming next, I think. So, um, you'll see. You'll see, Okoye. That's all I'm gonna say to that. Alrighty. Okay. If there's any more questions, I'm gonna stick through this for 4 more minutes. But then again, I want to thank you guys for joining up. I love seeing new faces every single time, and just keep in mind the content's only going to be getting better and better from here on out. Like I mentioned before, if you guys want to get more support on everything, message me through either my community or the academy or wherever you guys want. I will be active on them. But then again, yeah, I'm excited for all this. We're going in the right direction. I feel like there's a lot of new things that we're going to be going over, and especially for this flow designer as well, we have this thing called Autograph, where it's going to be able to design. You guys know, I'm sure you guys. It's basically going to be able to. You're going to be able to feed it like a website link, and from that website link, you are then going to you're then going to be able to create like an entire flow of what you want it to do. So it'll automatically create it for you. Think about it as like the co-pilot for prompting. Same exact thing, except it's for the flow designer. Is the flow designer hold on, let me pin it. Is the flow designer just the same as the prompt you see it generate? Yeah, I mean, the flow designer is going to do the same job as a prompt, I would say. It's just a different way to format it. Now, I haven't tested this enough myself to be confident in answering this question, but once I'm able to test it, I can come back with like better feedback on it. However, I do know that, like I mentioned, it's kind of goes back to what I mentioned about like the train tracks. It's just probably more of like a streamlined way of how to do something inside of the voice AI conversational skills. Sorry, not conversational skills. Voice AI prompting itself. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Well, we have 2 minutes, and I will tell you guys. Actually, no. I think I should be good on that. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining up. I really do appreciate each and every single one of you, and I'm looking forward to our next meeting. I always do these webinars on Fridays. So essentially, there's going to be another one next Friday. I'm going to be talking about a different topic. I believe it's already been posted. Yep, here it is. So on next Friday, we're going to be talking about creating an appointment no-show. So essentially, we're going to be creating a voice AI that is capable of following up with people who no-showed. So if you want to join up on that one, I'm super excited to have you guys there, but it's going to be really cool. How soon before we get access? Yeah, I'll give you guys access right now to everything. You'll be able to see everything. There you go. Cool. All right. Okay. I'll stop sharing the screen. Thank you guys. I will see you guys in the next webinar. All right. Peace out.